Daniel Trout for the department, and Amy Prater is my privacy specialist today.
Very good.
Vince Nowak for the father, Israel Renya. I'm present, Judge.
Ms. Grant?
Your Honor.
Oh, Stacy, you don't have a good feed.
I don't, Judge. I'm in Spearman, Texas, in the middle of nowhere. Can you hear me a little better? I'm trying to move up to a better spot is what I'm trying to do.
You're better now. And we don't have.
I'm sorry, on behalf
Go
of
ahead, Stacey.
Xerxes.
And we don't have a CASA worker in this case, Daniel?
No, sir.
Okay, very good. Well, Amy, why don't you give us an update on what's going on in our case?
Mom is doing very well. She is currently living in a sober living program. She was just able to transition her room into kind of a more private, less supervised setting, but still within the same sober living program. Mom is currently working all of her services and continues to test negative on UAs. She is currently, from speaking with Ms. Martinez this morning, she's currently in the car on the way to go visit Xerxes.
And tell me where Xerxes is currently placed.
He is placed in a foster
Is
home.
she actually traveling down there or meeting them halfway, or how's that working?
I believe she's meeting with them. We've been having some issues in the Lubbock St. Francis office with our restrooms. So I believe they are either going to the Bear Visitation Center today, the visitation house, or they're doing visits out in the community.
Okay, very good. And Amy, have you had any contact with the father at all?
I have not.
Okay. And in fact, because I'm new to the case, have we ever had any contact with him?
My understanding, I've only, the case transitioned to me about a month ago, but my understanding is that Ms. Hernandez, the previous worker, had very minimal contact with him as well.
Okay. And so is it going to be your recommendation that the court continue the temporary managing conservatorship and continue the placement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. What other services are we hoping to get Ms. Martinez to complete before we start talking about reunification?
She's currently working through all of them. She is working through parenting. She did complete RBT. She is working with her therapist. And as well as she is transitioning into her home. I'm not too sure. I haven't been able to speak with my supervisor about her current living arrangement since she just moved about a week ago. But other than that, I believe she's working all of the services on our service plan.
The sober living situation, is that something we're able to identify, or is it a shelter or something that we don't want to talk about online?
It's not a shelter. But her sober living program she was living in a house with many other roommates or housemates. Now she is transitioned into a house that is the best way to explain it is more of a mother-in-law's quarters with less supervision. She does share that house with one other person who is her sober living sponsor. And they have been able to set it up to where she could possibly have overnight visits or at-home visits with Xerxes.
Okay. And Amy, you probably don't know this, but for 14 years have run the local drug court. So I'm a little bit familiar with some of those facilities, but that sounds like a program I might not know about. Do you know who kind of oversees that sober living program?
I don't know exactly who oversees it, but the program is called the Beehive and it's out of Lubbock.
Oh, okay. I see. So that's not here locally in Amarillo.
No, sir.
Okay. So that's probably somebody that, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of who runs the drug court down there. It was Ruben Reyes till he passed away, and he was wonderful, but okay, good. Ms. Zavala, anything you'd like to let the court know as ad litem?
Xerxes is doing very well. Reports are that visits with mom go very well. He visits with her and then goes back to daycare and doesn't have any issues behavior wise at daycare after those visits. It sounds like he's happy and healthy and doing well, and that mom's working on what she needs to. And I think he's there, right there.
I didn't see him. Oh, there we are. Okay. Ms. Grant, anything you'd like to address with the court? Let's see, Vince, anything you'd like to address on behalf of Dad?
Yeah, I just want to point out, Amy, you've driven a mule shoe and knocked on the door and kind of yelled into the open door to make contact, correct?
Yes, I have.
And you've got the same phone number I've got?
Yes, sir. That's my understanding.
Now, my notes show that Mr. Renya did appear at our last hearing and he was ordered a drug screen. Do you know whether he actually showed up and appeared to drug screen?
No, sir, he did not drug screen.
This might be a silly question, but do you have any idea how I might get a hold of him other than driving a mule shoe, which I'm probably not going to do if you've done that already. He doesn't answer his phone. Any suggestions?
I don't really, I wasn't able to, and my understanding is that he lives with his sister, and her daughter. I wasn't able to make contact with anybody in the home to get that information. I apologize.
Thank you so much. That's all I have, Judge.
Vince, Muleshoe is beautiful this time of year. I think the spring wildflowers are in bloom, and I think you really should make that drive and check
You
that
know,
out.
I haven't had a good Liel's lunch since COVID hit, and I know Victor is down in Muleshoe running that restaurant, so I might make the trip.
Wow. Well, now, his mother always ran it and it was wonderful. I hope he hasn't messed it up, but yeah.
She's still running the show. I mean,
good.
She's still running the show.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Oh.
Let's see, we've got Stacy Grant back. Stacy, anything you want to address with the court?
No, Your Honor, I think that AB is on track with what we were going to ask, which was just more visitation from mom, maybe some overnights as she progresses. But I think AB's already looking at that. And I think with the negative drug testing and her commitment to travel to the visitation, she's on the right track. I think, but Amy, correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I believe that's the path that we've all been going on.
Yes, it is.
And if I can go to Spearman. Go ahead, Amy, sorry.
Yes, it is. I just need to speak with my supervisor and see exactly what Ms. Martinez's living arrangement is now, since she just recently moved. Yeah, that is our plan, and to move towards that.
Stacy,
And
how's
if
your
I can
sweet?
go to Spearman, Texas. How's what? I'm sorry.
I was going to ask you how your sweet mother's doing.
Oh my gosh, she's doing so much better, Judge. And I am gonna tell her I saw you today. She just thinks the world of you. And I'm gonna tell her I saw you today.
Well, I think about her often, so tell her I'm glad to hear she's doing well.
I will. Getting that behind her was a huge load off. She did fall in the yard 2 weeks ago and break her legs. And,
Oh.
and so she was working outside, but I finally convinced her it's time for us to get a yard guy. But she's just been a lot better since Randall County did so well with that, and we are so thankful and still grateful for that.
Good. We'll go on to Spearman and get your business taken care of, and we'll. No, does anyone have any objections to the recommendations of the department? Daniel, was there something else you wanted to?
Yes, sir. I was, and real quick, just for some privacy, could we Daniel travel to the department, and Michaela Kirksey is the pregnancy specialist today.
Joel Jackson on behalf of Justin Hill, present, ready.
All right, very good. Well, and Stacy, I always interrupt you. Sorry.
It's okay. Stacy Sabalo on behalf of Zanaya.
For 20 years, about it seemed like all I did was criminal cases, so I always forget to look to see if we have an ad litem. Well, why don't we go ahead and get an update if we can?
Good morning, Your Honor. So Zanaya is the baby in this case. She was reunified with her father March 15th. This case is an extension in the dismissal dates in July. Like I said, she's been reunified with Justin. She's been doing amazing in placement. She does not take any medications. She doesn't have any health concerns at this time. She has been eating and sleeping really well. I know that one of the concerns from Stacy Zavala was that she felt like whenever she visited, she was a little concerned just a little bit about the transition, getting her to be comfortable around dad, everything like that. She said seeing some videos might kind of help ease her concern with that. I did speak to Justin about it. He showed me right on the spot videos on his phone of them playing together and bonding together. So we kind of addressed that and moved forward. But from what I've seen, she plays with Justin. There was a really, really cute video about her like being in bed and playing like with his beard and everything like that and pretending like she was going to feed him. So any concern that we had at the beginning for that, I think has been pretty well addressed on my end. As far as Justin goes, I would just like to give a huge shout out to him. He's been doing amazing. He's taken on Zanaya and also the other child that the case just closed with. He works night shifts at Tyson. He's been in compliance with his drug screens. He's completed all services. He moved into a 3-bedroom house, and he's just been doing everything that he needs to be doing. I will say this last drug screen, he went for a hair follicle. There was an incident. I got a notification that the seal was misapplied, so it didn't go through, but that was of no fault of his own, and he did go and comply with the drug screen. So there is that, but that's nothing on him. All of his other drug screens have been great. Desiree is the mom in this case. She has missed the last 4 drug screens that she's been sent to for one reason or the other. She does stay in contact with me and let me know different reasons why she wasn't able to go or what had happened, but there are 4 missed drug screens. She just moved into a 1-bedroom apartment, and she's working a couple of nights a week cleaning a church in the afternoons. Due to the missed drug screens, we went ahead and staffed it with our supervisor and director and canceled the visits for the last 2 weeks until we can get some type of screen on her. I will say I've been to lots of her visits with Zanaya before they were canceled, and she's very, very bonded to the kids. They're very reactive towards her. You can just tell Zanaya loves being around her mom. So definitely some highs and lows, but Desiree's been making, we've had conversations about making progress and really getting to those drug screens. So I'd say that those are all of the updates I have at this time.
Okay, thanks. Mrs. Zavala, anything you'd like to add as the ad item?
I do want to compliment Justin. Thank you very much. I did have concerns previously. I wanted to make sure that there was bonding going on. Originally, back at the beginning, the original plan was he was working towards getting brother home and mom was working towards getting baby home. And so I was concerned when she was placed with him, whether there was actual bonding, but I got to see it myself and hear all about the videos. I appreciate the extra effort to make me feel comfortable with that. But I've now been to the home several times and have gotten to see her interact with dad. And it has made me feel much better. So I'm good, and my concerns have been taken care of. I think we're absolutely where we need to be.
Stacey, maybe I need to ask Michaela this, but do you know what Dad does with the baby when he's working that night shift?
Yes,
he does.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead, Michaela.
He has approved caregivers on his list that we've done all of the background checks and everything like that for them. So he has caregivers whenever he's gone to work, taking care of her.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Joel, anything you'd like to address with the court?
No, Your Honor, we just kind of like to pull this into a final and get a final order out of this. And the kid's been placed with him for some time now. And so only thing I have to offer is to, of course, you weren't at the last hearing on the other child, but essentially what we're asking is to adopt that order as a final order today.
Tell me then, Joel, just because I didn't have any contact with that other case, how old is that child?
I was 6.
Okay, and is that older child and the baby that we're talking about now, are they full brother and sister? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And so in the other hearing, the court appointed your client as the managing conservator?
Correct.
Okay. It wasn't a monitored return, or was it?
No, sir, it wasn't. In fact, I think, Judge, I'm going to kind of pass this off to Daniel because I don't have that in front of me, and he may, and Daniel can explain exactly what we did in that other hearing.
Yeah, what we did in the other child was already placed with Mr. Hill also. We gave sole managing to Mr. Hill and possessory to mom. We ordered no child support. We ordered $25 medical support for mom to pay. Dad is to supervise visitations if or have somebody designated by dad to supervise visitations with mom. If that agreement can't be reached, then mom can have 4 hours of visitation a month at family support services at a cost of mom. Dad can ask mom to drug screen anytime before visitations. UAs can be asked for before each one, hair follicles every 90 days. Dad will pay for those. If any of them come back positive, mom has to reimburse dad for the drug screen within 30 days. And I believe that was pretty much the extent of it. I've reached out to all the attorneys on this case. I just haven't heard back from Ms. Burke's attorney on it. I saw Stacey in here a second ago, but she dropped back out, I believe.
Yeah.
I was gonna try to talk to her about it, but that is what we're looking at doing, is getting an agreed order and get it presented to the court with that. I just haven't heard back from all parties yet on it.
That's on the other child.
No, the other
For
child
this one?
done. We're trying to mirror the same agreement to this child. And I just haven't gotten a yes or no from Ms. Burke's attorney on that.
Oh, okay. So certainly the department then isn't objecting to what Mr. Jackson's asking for. We just want to make sure that Ms. Burke's counsel has a right to weigh in on that.
Correct, John.
Do you want me just to reconvene this at a later time when we can
Well-
get Ms. Zavala? Or
Well, Ms. Burks, I don't know if she wants to speak on it. Like I said, I know she's represented by counsel, but Ms. Burks can speak if she wants to, I believe.
Desiree,
I can get that drafted and get it sent to the parties.
okay, Desiree, we don't want you to say anything if you don't want.
I really don't. I don't have contact with my attorney. Like I should have. I've already discussed the situation with Justin, and as long as he agrees to the situation, I'm in agreement to it too. I have not been.
Oh gosh, well, if we're not able to get her back, it sounds like, oh, there she is.
Okay.
Desiree, just in case we lose you again, it sounds like to me you're okay with having the order with the baby be the same as the older child. Am I right? You're on mute. I'm sorry. You're okay with it. Give me a thumbs up if that's okay. Okay. All right. Perfect. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead then and bless that agreement. And once you've got an order signed on that, then I'll go ahead and sign that. And Justin, maybe we make a big deal out of it because unfortunately, sometimes we don't see dads that step up to the plate like you have. And maybe that's a bias and over simplification of things. But I do want to say I really admire you for the way you've stepped up to the plate, and you've got a 1-year-old there that I know that's got to be a challenge for a single mom or a single dad. And so I admire you for what you're doing and appreciate that, and also admire the fact that you and Ms. Burks are able to work together. And I'll just tell you, these lawyers will tell you, and the folks from the department, we don't see parents that cooperate and sometimes put their own hatred and anger and those kinds of things aside. So when we do see parents that are willing to do what's best for the children and get along and co-parent together, I've got to tell you, it makes such an amazing difference in your child's life when you're willing to do that. So keep that up, and your kids are going to be so much happier and more successful in life. So thanks for what you're doing. And in the interest of like I said, I'll make that the court's order, final what you've agreed hearing. And let's go ahead and have announcements.
Daniel Trout for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services.
Joel Jackson for the mother, Brittany Jacobson. Your Honor, I'm expecting my client to be here. She just sent us some stuff about 30 minutes before. Is she not in a room?
Rachel, do we see mom?
No, she has not logged in.
Okay, thank you.
Stacy Zavala on behalf of Lucas.
Joel, do you want us to hang on a minute and let you try to call her?
Yes, sir. If you don't mind, we'll try to give her a call.
I don't mind at all. I'd rather have her here, so we'll give you a minute to do that. And Daniel, are we going to have some testimony from some folks?
Right now, Judge, we'd like to make an announcement. It'd have to be for the court's approval. But what we would ask is that parties at this time have agreed for a 6-month extension on the case to be approved by the court. We would be asking, the department would be asking that mom be ordered again to complete all unfinished services at this time. We'd also ask that mom be ordered to go into an inpatient drug rehab. That was recommended through the OSAR that was done early on in the case. Mom is not gone, but we would ask the court today to also order her to go to drug rehab. Give her the 6 months to try to complete the services and see if we can get the child back and work with mom a little bit. The court has to find on this extraordinary circumstances to grant the extension. We would state that the extraordinary circumstances this time would be the child still having some behavioral problems, is not in a long-term home right now, is just in a foster home. And we would like to try to work with the parent, with the mother, and see if we can get a work toward reunifying at a later date. But that's what we'd be asking for today.
Okay, very good. And Joel, is that your agreement?
That's our agreement, Your Honor. And it's my understanding, my client tells me that she has been on the waiting list at Centocor And maybe the department can help speed that up. I don't know. But yes, so that's our agreement.
Very good. And Ms. Zavala, as the ad litem for the child, do you feel like at this time that is in the child's best interest?
I do, Your Honor.
Okay, very good. And I assume, Daniel, after that original OZAR is done, we probably have some time before we have to have another one done. Are we still within that time period?
I may have to get Ms. Brown to answer that on where we stand if we need to do another OSAR. Do you know, Ms. Brown?
That I'm not sure.
If she's on the waiting list at Senecor, then she shouldn't have to do another OSAR. If she's not on the waiting list, then she might.
She might have to.
Okay. Who else do y'all utilize on the, do you sometimes send people to Serenity and Plainview?
Yes, sir.
Any place else that y'all utilize?
I think those are the two main ones that we use around this area.
Yeah, well, in my drug court, that's pretty much what we're limited to as well. Thank God Senecor came along and gave us somebody local. So, okay. And just for the record, Brittany, if you could unmute yourself.
Sure.
Is that your agreement and what you're asking this court to approve?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I know you struggled a little bit. Tell me what's going to be different this time.
To actually get my services completed, I did struggle a little bit with, got stuck in a move from Hutchinson to Potter County, and that just kind of delayed things. And I did get COVID. I was sick for about a month, which definitely did not help right after I started my services. So that just, everything's been kind of rough there. But now that I'm settled in and I am on that waiting list. I've been going to the MAP program through TPC. So who got me on the Senecor waiting list was waiting for a bed at this point.
Okay, very good. And you don't know this about me, but I still preside over the drug court every week. So I'm very familiar with Senecor and with TPC and the services they offer. And of course, very familiar with addiction issues and the things that go along with them. You understand, I'm sure that the recommendation that was previously going to be made was that I name the department as the permanent managing conservator and terminate your rights. You're aware of that?
I am aware of that. And I thank you guys for
giving
me.
You're getting, and it's probably not a second chance. This might be a third chance or more. And I just want to tell you that I don't see people get that many chances often. And so it's a gift to you and a gift to your child. And I want you to take advantage of that gift. Okay.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot of people here that want to support you and want to help you and are, have the services and the finances and everything else available. We just need you to want that help and to accept it. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I just got back from the Downtown Women's Center luncheon, and there were, 100 of women there that have been through exactly what you've been through and going through, and they've been able to get their lives back together and reunite with their children and have a new fresh start on life. And many of them with the help of CPS and the people right here on this screen. So it's absolutely positive that it'll work and it's possible. The only missing ingredient right now is you taking advantage of it. So we're going to give you that opportunity, and you understand that if you don't take advantage of it, probably what's going to happen is that your parental rights are going to be terminated.
Yes, sir. I understand that.
Okay. All right. Well, you're being given a wonderful opportunity, and I wish you the very best of luck. And if there's anything I can do to help you along the way, I'm happy to do that too. But I know Senecor, I hope you get in there real quick, because that's a great program and you'll get everything out of it that you put into it yourself. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. All right. Good luck to you, Daniel.
Yes, sir. And Judge, like I said, just for the extension, you'll have to announce that you find extraordinary circumstance on that. If we could go ahead and also do a short review hearing just to stay in compliance. And I think we have the new date set.
Okay.
In the next
Very good. Well, based on the agreement of the parties and my discussions with Ms. Jacobson, I do find that there are extraordinary circumstances, that being the child is continuing to have some difficulties, that there's no long-term placement solution at this time, that mom did have some hurdles there with COVID and a move and those kinds of things. And I find that is sufficient to allow us to continue this matter for a period of time. Do we need Rachel to give us a date for that review hearing, Daniel?
She's emailed one out just a second ago. I believe it looks like maybe September 5th on the 9 o'clock docket.
We're here on
And the final
trial
will be set on November 7th.
If you go ahead and have some announcements.
Daniel Trial for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. We're ready.
Ethan Murphy here on behalf of Jennifer Trogdon, the mother. We are present and ready, Your Honor.
Lauren Lucero on behalf of Eric Goldsmith Senior, Your Honor. I'm present and ready. I did send a link for the Zoom registration to Mr. Goldsmith's, but I do not believe that he's going to appear today.
Good.
Thank you, Zavala, on behalf of the children.
And I think we,
Casa.
okay, great. Anybody else that needs to announce anything? Okay, and are we going to have some testimony, Daniel?
Yes, sir. We'll have, I believe at least 3 witnesses. We'll try to get through them pretty quick, but we have at least 3 witnesses. We would call Rodolfo Flores at this time, Aaron.
All right, Mr. Flores.
And Ms. Flores, how are you employed?
I am an investigator for the Department of Family Protective Services.
And are you familiar with the case we're speaking of today involving the 2 Goldsmith children?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Now you weren't the investigator throughout the beginning of this case, but you worked on it some, is that correct?
I was the investigator throughout the case, yes.
Okay. Did you speak with Ms. Trogdon in November of
yes,
2021?
Yes, I did.
And was that in regards to a drug screen that she had taken?
That is correct.
And during that conversation, did Ms. Trogdon admit to you that she had smoked methamphetamines?
Correct. I had confronted her about a positive drug screen that she had with us, with the department. And in that discussion, she admitted to me that she had used methamphetamines.
Okay. And when you worked on this case, you worked on it with Ms. Gonzalez-Williams, both of y'all working on this case?
Correct. So during the investigation, we decided to send the case to Family-Based Safety Services, and that's when Ms. Gonzalez was included in the case.
Okay. And so what prompted this case when you started?
We received a report back in September indicating there was concerns with the family due to mom possibly using drugs, possibly being some domestic violence between mom and dad, Mr. Eric Goldsmith Sr., and then some concerns with there possibly being some drug trafficking in Mr. Eric Goldsmith Sr. and his mother's home, so the paternal grandmother.
Okay. And so when y'all started working on this, y'all decided to go with the family-based safety services instead of removing the kids at that time?
That is correct.
And that's in an effort to keep the family together, is that correct?
That is correct.
When was do you remember when the decision was made that we needed to go through with the removal instead of family-based?
So that decision was made after my investigation. It was during the family-based safety services.
Okay. All right. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Lucero?
Mr. Flores, when you became involved with this family, did you ever have contact with Mr. Goldsmith?
No, I did not.
Okay, so any allegations that you'd mentioned or on intake or anything like that, that came through someone else, is that correct? You weren't ever able to prove whether or not he was using drugs or if there was domestic violence or anything like that, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and as far as, was Mr. Goldsmith part of that FBSS case?
So when we have an FBSS case, we include both parents. Unfortunately, in this situation, Mr. Goldsmith had not been located.
And were you involved whenever the department moved forward with removing the children later on, or was that Ms. Gonzalez?
That was Ms. Gonzalez.
Okay. And during your investigation, isn't it true that Mr. Goldsmith had not had any prior CPS history?
I don't recall that. I would have to look at my documentation.
Okay. If it was listed in Ms. Gonzalez's investigative report that there was no CPS history for Mr. Goldsmith, do you believe that would be accurate?
I would believe that to be accurate.
All right. I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Murphy?
No questions with this, Your Honor.
Very good. Ms. Zavala?
No questions of this witness, Your Honor.
All right, very good. The department may call its next witness.
We call Sarah Gonzalez. How are you familiar with that case?
I was the family-based safety services worker assigned to the case, yes.
And when did you become involved with the case?
I received I actually received the referral and went out to do the family assessment with Rudy on December 9th. And then the case was transferred to me on December 14th of 2001, or
Okay.
I'm sorry, 21.
Okay, all right. And tell us exactly what family-based safety services is?
Yes, we work closely with the family in offering services. We're actually, a support system throughout our case. We offer services like counseling, domestic violence support, drug treatment, just a variety of things depending on the issue that we are involved for.
Okay. And what were you involved for in this one?
This one was the concerns of domestic violence and drug use.
Okay. Were you able to meet with the mother?
Yes.
And what was your initial contact with her?
My initial contact with her was the family assessment that myself and Rudy went to do.
And when you say family assessment, what do you mean?
It's like a survey. We get to know the family so that way we know what their needs are before offering services.
Okay. And is this something they agreed to do?
They were kind of hesitant at first, but they did complete the assessment and we move forward with services.
Okay. What kind of services did you provide? Were you providing for them?
Yes, we provided, because at the time she was with her boyfriend, and so we did provide some couples counseling. We also provided individual counseling. We also provided some domestic violence group for her. We also provided her with drug treatment, random drug screens, and then also for the children, some play therapy.
Okay. And are these services similar to what you would see in a normal CPS case, where there's a family planning services set up for them to work through?
Yes.
Okay. And is it a situation where if they complete those services, they kind of let go from the program at that time?
Yes. Yes, depending on the progress made in those services, yes.
Okay. How did Ms. Trogdon and them do during this case?
They did fairly well with the counseling. The drug treatment was a little bit of a struggle, but they also made sure that the kids were in their counseling sessions. I know that was a struggle due to transportation, but they did engage with their services, and they did make some efforts to do that.
Okay. Was that throughout the life of SPSS?
Yes.
Okay. What led to the change in the status on that?
Well, there was some conflict with the placement. There had always been some conflict with the placement of the children. The children were placed out with the current boyfriend's sister-in-law before I received the case. So there was some conflict there.
Okay. And the current boyfriend was Billy Kane, is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And was he going to be working these also?
Yes,
okay.
He agreed to.
Okay. And was that due to him being in the home? Yes. Now, what were the issues that happened that you're talking about that led to this?
Well, Jennifer had some issues as far as the communication between her and placement. They had some issues there. Placement also had some financial issues, as well as Billy's brother had been released from prison. And so there was an issue there. So they had a domestic dispute and the children were just abruptly dropped off at Jennifer's house. And so we tried to figure out a way for the kids to stay there. So we did ask for them to drug screen.
And so they were watching the kids, some situation happened and they dropped them back off with mother.
Yes.
And did that lead to, was mother supposed to be kind of supervised with the kids at this time?
Yes, she was.
Okay. And so when the kids were dropped back off with her, that led to no supervision between them.
Correct.
Okay. So where did it go from there? What happened after that?
We did ask her to drug screen. They did go and drug screen. I believe it took them a little bit to get that drug screen done, if I'm remembering correctly. They both were asked to do a UA.
And just to clarify real quick, when you say they, who were we talking about?
I'm sorry, Billy and Jennifer, because they were living together at that time. I'm sorry.
Okay. Now they went and drug screen, and I believe they come back as negative.
Correct, I believe so.
Then did mom move out with Billy after that?
She did.
Okay. Did she say why?
She wasn't getting along with Billy and didn't want to fight in front of the kids, and so they moved out.
Okay. Where did she move to?
At first it was to a motel on the Boulevard, Silver Spur, I believe.
Okay.
And then to a different motel on the Boulevard as well, Rama Motel.
Okay. And so was the mother, did she stay at that hotel or was she bouncing between hotels?
She was consistent with the first one, and then she was actually staying with a friend there. And then she decided to get her own hotel room. And so they winded up staying consistently at Rama.
Okay. Did she ever, during in this time, did she ever move back in with Eric Goldsmith Senior during this, or did she just bounce around to the hotels?
Not that I'm aware of that she's back in with Eric.
Okay. And then there was a concerning drug screen later down when she
Yes.
back and saw her. Okay.
Yes.
And then due to mom bouncing around from hotels and concerning drug screen with no supervision, was the determination made to remove at that time?
Yes, sir.
And where were the kids placed at that time?
I believe that we had to put them in foster care.
They went to foster care. Okay.
Yes.
And due to the lifestyle choices situation at the time, do you believe that the removal of the kids was in the best interest of the children?
Yes, sir.
And that's for both children, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Murphy?
Yeah, but Ms. Williams, you said that early on when the first developed the family plan, you said Ms. Trogdon was doing fairly well with that, correct?
Correct.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, she was attending her counseling regularly. She was also able to say how, she was progressing and using coping skills. So she was able to show, like, not just attend and show on paper that she was attending class. She was able to explain what she was actually gaining from services.
And throughout the life of this case, would it be fair to say that the main issue has been drug use?
Yes, sir.
And would it be fair to say that Ms. Trogdon on multiple occasions has made attempts to deal with the drug addiction?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Lucero?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Gonzalez-Williams, whenever you became involved in the case and Ms. Trogdon started working the FBSS services, you mentioned that there was issues of domestic violence. Is that correct?
Correct. That was the intake that we received.
Okay. But at that time, she was living with Mr. Kane. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So it wasn't domestic violence between her and Mr. Goldsmith. There were allegations of domestic violence between her and Mr. Kane. Is that correct?
Not correct. No.
Not correct?
No.
Okay. Well, she wasn't living with Mr. Goldsmith at the time, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Then, and then as far as services that were worked during that FBSS case, were those services, well, let me ask you this. Did you ever meet with Mr. Goldsmith about working services with that FBSS case?
I could never get in contact with him.
Okay. So during the duration of your involvement, you never had contact with him. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And at any time, whenever you were involved with the case, would you agree with me that Mr. Goldsmith was a non-offending parent? Can you agree with that statement?
Due to the allegations, I don't know, because we were never able to get in contact with him. So we do not know whether or not he was. I mean, I can't say yes or no to that.
I understand. And as far as you know, in your investigation or your involvement, Mr. Goldsmith didn't have any prior CPS history, did he?
Correct, he didn't.
I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Zavala?
Would you agree that the purpose of the FBSS program is to try to keep families together as services are worked?
Correct.
If Mr. Goldsmith had responded to your request, would you have worked with him just like you worked with mom?
Correct. Yes.
And if he had cooperated, is it possible that there may have been a situation where removal was not necessary?
Correct. There could have been, yes.
While mom initially cooperated, would you agree that drug use was an issue during the family-based case?
Yes, ma'am.
And it was only due to those concerning drug screens that removal had to take place?
Yes.
I pass the witness.
Proud, any additional direct exam?
Real quick, Ms. Gonzalez-Williams, now during, Ms. Lucero asked you if you'd ever had contact with Eric Senior. Just to clarify, you didn't have any contact with him during the FBSS case, is that correct?
During the FBSS case, during the removal, I did.
Okay, so after the kids were removed, a couple of days after, you did receive a call from him, correct?
Actually, yes, I did.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
I just want to clear that up. During that time, did he was pled into this case as alleged, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did he at any time during your conversations ask to have the kids placed with him or deny anything from what you talked to him on?
No.
After you had contact with him around May 12th, is that correct?
I believe so.
And then you met with him around the 17th of May, 2022?
Yes.
With the paperwork?
Yes,
Did he ask about getting an attorney at that point or doing the paperwork? He was gonna fill out the paperwork for you?
yes, he did. I asked him to fill out the paperwork for me and that I would pick it up from him because he had transportation issues. I did pick it up from him.
Okay. Did at any time did he request to be placement or acknowledge that he wanted to be placement for the children?
No.
I'll pass witness, Your Honor.
Does anybody have any recross?
I have a couple of questions, Your Honor.
Sure, go right ahead.
All right. When was the last contact that you had with Mr. Goldsmith? Do you recall?
May 17, 2022.
Okay. Did you discuss with him that he could be possible placement and what would be required of him so the kids could be placed with him?
I didn't, I gave him the information about the removal and I talked to him about going in drug screening because of our concerns of him not participating in the case and the allegations. And he wanted to get an attorney before he made any moves. So.
Okay, and I understand that, but whenever you had talks with Ms. Trogdon, back whenever, there was concerns about drug use, did you explain to her that it'd be difficult to leave the children with her if she was positive for drugs on her drug screen?
Correct.
Okay. Now, when you spoke with Mr. Goldsmith, did you let him know that if he were to drug screen and show that he was clean, that he had the possibility of having the kids placed with him?
I don't recall having a conversation like that.
Okay. Did when you asked him to drug screen, did you explain to him why y'all were asking him to drug screen?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you tell him?
Well, I told him that because of the concerns that we had, we were wanting him to go in drug screen. We requested both of them to actually go in drug screen. We usually do that whenever we do have a removal. We ask both parties to.
Okay. So when Mr. Trout asked you if you stated he never asked, is that correct?
Correct.
But then again, there was no one ever discussed with him that the kids could possibly be placed with him, right?
Correct.
Okay, I'll pass the witness.
Anybody else have any recross? Okay, then the department may call its next witness.
We'd call Christina Hunter, please. And are you familiar with the case involving the Goldsmith children?
I am.
And how are you familiar with this case?
I am the permanency specialist on this case.
Okay. Have you been since the beginning?
I have not.
Okay. Who was the worker before you?
The original permanency specialist was Katie Smith.
Okay. How long have you been on the case?
Guys, I was assigned 9/9 of 2022.
Okay, so about 4 months or so after the removal.
Yes.
Okay. And what is the department's first steps when these type of cases come into y'all, or St. Francis's first step when this comes in?
So whenever we are assigned a case, we are to review the history. We are also to make contact with the parents, make contact with the kids, go see everybody, assess where everybody's at, and determine the next steps from there.
Okay. And does the department or does St. Francis put together service plans?
Yes, we do.
Are you familiar with whether service plans were generated for this case?
Yes, there was.
And did you receive what I sent out, exhibit number 1?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. Did you have time to review that?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what was that?
That was the family plan of service, which lays out the services that are requested for the parents to work in order to mitigate the reasons for removal.
Okay. And this packet of service plans has Ms. Drogan and Eric Goldsmith on it together. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you review these?
I have, yes.
And these are accurate copies of service plans that were for the parents. Is that correct?
Yes.
Tell me exactly a little bit more detail as far as what services are for.
So the services are specific to each case. We want to build upon the strengths of the parents as well as to build upon their weaknesses to hopefully ensure that they're able to create lifestyle changes so their family can be reunified and they don't have to fall back into the same situation that caused the children to be removed in the first place.
And these service plans, are they gone over with the parents?
Yes, they are.
Judge, I'd like to admit exhibit number 1, which is the family plans of service that were filed with the court on 6/13 of 22. Do you have them pulled up?
I do.
Can you scroll to page 25 of 29? And is there a signature line at the bottom?
There is.
And whose signature is that?
Jennifer Trogdon.
And then on 26 of 29.
Okay.
First signature line.
That is Eric Goldsmith.
And these were signed in June, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So parents were aware of services they were supposed to work.
Yes, sir.
How have the parents done on working services?
Neither of the parents have completed any of the services.
Any of them, they haven't completed anything?
I believe Jennifer, apologies, let me look back to my records. So Jennifer did complete an OSAR evaluation. So she did get that completed. However, she did not follow through on the recommendations.
One real quick, does the service plan recommend that they follow all recommendations?
Yes.
And what was the recommendation of the OSAR?
The recommendations from the OSAR was that she was to participate in inpatient services with Synacor and followed by intensive outpatient services.
Okay. Did she ever check into inpatient treatment?
She did.
Did she finish inpatient treatment?
She did not.
And when you say she did not, what happened?
She checked herself into Synacor on February the 24th, and then she left the facility on March the 10th after business hours. So it was recorded that she actually left on March the 11th.
Okay. And was that a 30-day program, 6 days? Do you know how long that?
It was a 30-day program.
So she left about halfway through.
Yes, sir.
Did she ever attempt to go back?
No, sir.
And she checked herself out. Was she released from the program, or did she? I mean, I know she left the facility, but did she leave the whole program on her own accord, or was she dismissed from it? How did
No, she left on her own accord.
Has she tried to go to any other facility or just Synacor?
She did attempt to go to Serenity House prior to that.
Okay.
She checked herself in on December the 8th and then checked herself out on December the 10th of 2022.
Okay, so that was only about 2 days?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was she supposed to do a psychological eval?
Yes, sir. I do believe that was part of her services.
Did she ever complete that?
Let me look.
Have you been able to have home visits with the mother?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Has it been consistent?
It has not.
Okay. Has mother been consistent about letting you know where she is, communicating her whereabouts, that sort of stuff?
No, sir.
Have you had verification of any pay stubs?
There was prior, but nothing recent.
Okay. And when you say recent, like month, 2 months, what are we looking at?
Within the last 3 months?
Okay. So you're not sure if she's working at this time or not?
I am not.
Do you know whether she has a reliable vehicle?
Last I knew of, she did not.
Okay. But you're not sure if she has gotten one since the last time you told her?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay. Visits with the children. Has she been having visits?
No, sir.
What was that due to? When did she have visits and when were they cut off, if she had them?
So whenever I took over as the permanency specialist for this case, she was having visits with her children. We were transporting her to Lubbock to see them weekly. And then unfortunately, Jennifer's visitations were stopped in November of 2022.
Okay. And what was that for?
Because she was either not testing as requested, and she was also not engaging in services.
In, I believe it was September. Did mom call you and admit that she had relapsed at that time?
Yes.
And what did she say she had relapsed with?
Methamphetamines and marijuana.
Okay. Was mother required to do parenting classes?
Yes, she was.
And has she completed parenting classes?
No, she has not.
Did she start attending? Did she go to any of the classes that you know of?
She did start attending. She was attending her parenting classes through the Padre program.
Okay. Do you know how many she went to?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I apologize.
Now, drug screens, is she required to, through the service plan, to test for the department?
Yes.
Was she consistent with her testing?
No, she was not.
Missed tests, are they considered presumed positives?
Yes, sir.
Do you know about how many tests throughout the case that Ms. Troutman has missed?
I can tell you. Give me a second. Let me count. 7.
So, when was the last time she tested for you?
The last test that I actually received completed by Jennifer was on December the 9th of 2022 while she was in Serenity House.
Okay. So that was in the 2 days that she was in Serenity House?
Yes, sir.
And since then, how many times have you asked her to test?
3.
And she has no show for those.
She either refused or did not show.
Is there still an ongoing concern of a possible drug issue?
Yes.
Was Ms. Trogdon required to do individual counseling?
Yes, she was.
Did she do that?
She did start that, but she did not complete it.
And when you say started, what do you mean?
Originally, she was set up with services through Delos Hinders, and she missed 4 appointments in a row. And so she was dismissed from therapy with Delos. She did not get it restarted. However, she did get an appointment scheduled through Family Support Services, but it was right at the time that she entered into Synacor. And so she did miss that first appointment, but she never rescheduled.
Okay. And was she required to do domestic violence? And was that WAVE program? Is that what she was supposed to be doing?
I know it's the Domestic Violence Support Group.
Okay.
It's through Family Support Services as well. And she did not complete that.
Okay. So throughout the life of this case, she has completed the OSAR.
She has completed the OSAR, and I do apologize. I misspoke earlier. She also completed a rational behavior therapy class as well.
Okay, so she did the RBT class. So, but are those the only 2 out of a 10 or so services that she is supposed to work, that she completed?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, during the life of this case, did you ever have any contact with Eric Singh?
I have.
And was he to work services?
He also was to work services.
Okay. During the life of this case, has he worked any services for you?
No, sir.
Has he started any services?
No, sir.
Has he how often do you try to contact him?
I try to contact him at minimum every month. I've tried to contact him via email, text, phone calls, and I've gotten actual responses back from him and have had conversations with him maybe a handful of times.
Okay. At any time, did y'all discuss him working services?
Yes.
Did he say he was going to, he wasn't going to? I know he signed a service plan, but did he state that he was planning on getting them started or no?
The conversation that I had with him in February, he indicated to me that he was wanting to work services. And so I sent him another copy of his family plan via DocuSign to him so that he would be able to have it electronically, because we're all in an electronic world now. He did not sign it, did not view it, because we're able to see notifications on DocuSign if the document is viewed. The email that he had that I sent it to, I did confirm it with him before I sent it to him as well. And then I also reached out to him afterwards, and I got no responses since then.
Was February the last time you talked to him?
Physically talked to him, yes, was in February.
Okay. And have you had text or email conversations with him since then?
I've reached out, but I've gotten 0 responses back.
Okay. So just clarify again, at this time, he has not had worked any services for you.
That is correct.
And he, besides February, the last chance was 3 months ago in February, mentioning he wanted to work services, but has still yet to do any of that.
Where he was responsive, yes, sir.
Okay. What about his visits? Has he been having visits?
He's not had a single visit.
Has he asked for visits?
Not since I was the worker. According to the documentation that I had reviewed upon accepting this case, he had asked for visits, but whenever the prior worker had reached out about trying to set up visits, there again was no response.
During this case, are you aware of paternity registry searches?
Yes.
Did you receive exhibit number 2 and exhibit number 3?
Yes, sir.
And what are those?
They're the certificates of paternity registry search. It's basically stating that there was a diligent search of the paternity registry to be able to identify who is the father of the children.
And to see if somebody has registered?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd ask to admit exhibit number 2 and 3 as the certificate of paternity registry search indicating that Mr. Goldsmith or anybody has not registered or attempted to register. Ms. Hunter, could you tell me real quick, the department today is asking to terminate the parental rights of sorry, I just went blank. Jennifer Trogdon as to the children here at Goldsmith.
Yes.
And is that based on failure to work services?
Yes.
As far as the mom, constructive abandonment, because there hasn't been any visitations since 5-6 months ago.
Yes, she has not had a visit since November.
And the department has given her the option to work services in order to, and visitations can be reinstated. Is that correct?
Yes.
And are you asking to terminate the parental rights of the alleged dad, Eric Goldsmith Sr., based upon failure to work services,
Yes,
constructive abandonment for not having any visitation since the beginning of this case.
yes,
And this case has been going on for right at a year, with the children being in care for at least 6 months.
yes, sir.
And department's made reasonable efforts to try to reunite the parents with the children. Is that correct? And
Yes, sir.
also based on the failure to register with the paternity registry search,
Yes, sir.
as to Eric Senior to both kids.
Yes, sir.
And Judge, we'd ask that the court take judicial notice that Mr. Goldsmith was served on this case, and he was personally served on June 7th of 2022 on this case.
And my records also reflect that he was served on that date, and I will take judicial notice.
Thank you, Honor. How are the children doing right now, Ms. Honor?
They're doing well overall. They are incredibly knowledgeable for their circumstances, unfortunately, for as young as they are.
Or what type of placement are they in right now?
They are currently in a foster home.
Are we looking into any sort of adoption situation, or haven't found that family yet?
Unfortunately, we thought we had a potential long-term placement, but they unfortunately backed out. We also looked at Jennifer's sister that she recommended that we look at, and her sister was not willing to take the children either.
Okay, so we are trying to look at families. We can find families, correct?
Yes, we've looked at family. I've asked multiple times to Jennifer. I even tried reaching out to Eric Senior, asking if there was any family members that we needed to look at for potential long-term placement. Unfortunately, the only family member that was provided was not able to take them. So we are at this point looking at an adoption process.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Murphy?
Ms. Hunter, one of the first questions that you tried to ask you was about whether or not Ms. Trogdon worked services. You said she had not worked services, correct?
She has not completed all her services, no.
Okay, but initially he asked, you said she had not worked any services, correct?
Honestly, I don't know off the top of my head. Daniel asked me a lot of questions.
Gotcha. But she has made several attempts to get services done, correct?
She has attempted to start services, yes.
Okay, I mean, she did the rational behavior classes, correct?
She did.
And she started the Padre program?
She started, but did not complete.
Sure. And she did the outpatient through daily recovery, is that correct?
She started, but did not complete.
Sure. And the OSAR assessment, she did that twice, correct?
Yes.
All right. And there was a time when she relapsed with drug use, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again?
There was a time when she relapsed and had some realizations with drug use, correct?
Yes. It was in September. It's basically from that point moving forward. We've had continuous issues with it, yes.
And when that happened, she reached out to you and let you know that she had relapsed, correct?
I actually reached out to her, but she did admit to it, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll pass it with you.
Ms. Hunter, whenever you've had contact with my client, Mr. Goldsmith, well, let me ask you this. You weren't the worker whenever the family plan of service was signed, right?
The initial family plan, no, ma'am, I was not.
Okay. And then was there another, the one that I see, I came into this case late, the one that I have that was filed today, I believe was from June of 2022. Would that be correct? Was that the last one?
I honestly, ma'am, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. And the reason I ask is I was reviewing the permanency report to the court, and it lists services on there that Mr. Goldsmith didn't work, but that weren't listed on his family plan of service. Were you aware of that or no?
So the family plan of service is able to be changed based upon the needs of the case as it progresses.
Okay, but so would he have been given, and I understand that there's been issues, he hasn't, you said he hasn't worked services, but would there have been another family plan signed that included, for example, BIP class wasn't included in the original plan of service, and with the one that's been filed with the court as the exhibit, the Padre program wasn't listed on the family plan of service, the RBT class wasn't listed, the psychosocial evaluation wasn't listed, individual counseling wasn't listed, and couples counseling wasn't listed. Were you aware of that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but when did they become part of the service plan?
If you give me a second, I can go back and look
All
and
right,
tell you specifically.
Thank you.
That it was on the family plan that I sent to him actually in February.
Okay. But that wasn't ever filed with the court, was it? I didn't see it when I looked.
It's a possible oversight on my part.
Now, whenever you spoke with Mr. Goldsmith, did you ever have conversations with him that if he worked his services and if things weren't going well with Ms. Trogdon, that there was a possibility that the children could be placed with him?
Our conversation was relatively pretty brief, quite honestly. We spoke about the services, we spoke about his children. We didn't specifically go into about placement of his children being placed with him, no.
Okay, so whenever y'all talked to him about working his services, what did you explain to him? He needed to work these services for what reason?
Whenever I spoke with him, he already had a pretty good grasp, and from my understanding, as to he knew that the services were to help reunify with him with his kids. He stated that he was a little bit lost. He didn't know kind of where to start with the services. And so I told him, let me get you your family plan. Let's go over it. And then we can kind of go from there and take it one step at a time.
Okay.
Whenever we had that conversation, him and Jennifer were living together at that point. But after they were no longer living together, there was no further communication with him at that point.
Okay, and that was just in February of this year, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, when I know that his signature appears on that plan of service that was filed in June of 2022, do you know if he came into the office, if someone went over it with him with the phone, they emailed it to him and he signed it and sent it back, or do you know?
That was signed via DocuSign.
Okay, so do you have any, and I know you weren't the worker or at that time, but in your notes, does it say whether or not who might have gone over that service plan with him and explained those services to him?
It would have been the primary worker at the time, Katie Smith.
Okay. And at any time during your communications with them, besides in February, did you ever go over into any of those services with him?
I attempted to, but again, he was not responsive. I apologize.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Now, you stated that there was a possible placement, but that wasn't able to take the children. Prior to my involvement in the case, I believe there was a home study ordered, an order for a home study on a Sky Morris. Is that the individual that you're referring to?
No.
Do you know? No. Do you know if a home study was ever completed on a person named Sky Morris?
I don't believe I was advised of anything of that, no.
Okay. The reason I ask is, again, it was prior to my involvement, but I see where an order for a home study was done for a home study on Sky Morris, but I don't ever see where one was completed. So do you know if a home study was ever completed on anyone during the pendency of this case?
There was not a home study that I'm aware of. However, like I stated before, Ms. Trogdon's sister was looked into, but she stated she was not willing to take the children. So there was no need to move forward with a home study or ICPC request.
Okay. But again, you're not familiar with the name Sky Morris, correct?
No, ma'am, not off the top of my head.
Okay. All right. I'll pass the witness. Thank you.
Ms. Hunter, I want to go through the family plan of service that was filed. I believe it was Exhibit 1. Sorry, Exhibit 1. And it talks about Eric Goldsmith. Did it require him to, I think on page 15 of 29, did it require him to complete an OSAR?
Give me just one second. Let me get to it. Yes.
Do you know if he ever completed an OSAR?
No, ma'am.
Did it require on page 16 for Mr. Goldsmith to submit to random drug tests?
Yes.
Did he ever submit to any random drug tests?
No, ma'am.
Does it require that he, on page 20 of 29, that he locate and maintain stable housing? Has he ever provided you any information about his housing?
No, ma'am.
On page 22 of 29, it says that he will locate and maintain appropriate employment. Has he ever provided you any paycheck stubs as required?
No, ma'am.
On page 23 of 29, it talks about providing own transportation to visits. Has he provided you any documentation that he has transportation?
No, ma'am.
And has he attended any visits?
No, ma'am.
He's required to let St. Francis know of any changes in residence, phone number, or employment within 5 days. Have you ever received any notifications?
I have not.
It also requires that he maintain regular contact with the caseworker, correct?
Yes.
This was the actual family plan that he signed and has been entered as an exhibit, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Has he done any of those things on that service plan?
No, ma'am.
How often have you tried to reach out to him since you've been the caseworker?
Every single month.
And have you ever been successful in getting him to drug test or cooperate with you in any way?
No, ma'am, unfortunately not.
You became the caseworker in September, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
The visits for mom were stopped in November.
Yes, ma'am.
And did you discuss with Jennifer why those visits were stopped?
Yes.
And why was that?
The visits were stopped because of the continued drug usage, the failure to screen, as well as the lack of consistent participation in services.
So if I am reading your report correctly, was there one clean test for Jennifer Trogdon, August 11th of 22, a UA?
Yes.
Other than that one test, and I'm not counting the previous FBSS case, you know, those services, but just in this part of the case after removal, is that one test in August of 22 the only clean drug test we've ever had for Ms. Trogdon?
Yes, ma'am.
Other than that, have the tests either shown drug use or she failed to attend?
Yes, or refused.
Did you make it clear to Jennifer that her visitation could start up again at some point?
Yes.
What did Jennifer need to do in order to start those visits again?
To consistently participate in services, that includes screening. Actually stated that we were, even with the clean drug screen, we were going to wait to ensure that there was consistency as to ensure that the kids were not getting pulled back and forth with visits and then not having them.
Is it difficult on the kids to start and stop visits?
Extremely.
I pass the witness.
Your Honor, I just have one question.
Sure,
Maybe
go
two.
ahead.
All right. Ms. Hunter, just from my knowledge, whenever the department or St. Francis, adds additional services, like was done in this case back in February, do y'all have like whether it be a Teams meeting or some type of conference to discuss with the parents the additional services that are being added, or how does that work?
Yes, we actually had a permanency conference for this case.
Okay.
Actually, right around that time, believe it or not.
Okay. That's all I have, Your Honor. I'll pass the witness.
The department, I couldn't think of the name. The department may call its next witness.
We call Antonio Graves.
All right, Mr. Graves.
And Mr. Graves, how are you employed?
Through TPC with the case manager for the Padre Education Program.
Okay, so you work, are you the service provider for our CPS cases with Padre?
Yes.
Okay. And are you familiar with the parties that we're talking about today, either Jennifer Trogdon or Eric Goldsmith?
With Ms. Jennifer Trogdon.
Okay. And how are you familiar with her?
She was referred to my program for services through Ozark.
Okay. And did you begin working with her?
Yes, I did.
And so how does the Padre program work? What the first steps on that?
Well, once they have been referred to the program, we do initial screening, whether it's over the phone or in person. The screening is just getting additional information, just like any other services, and then going from there.
Okay. And standard on a case, or on this case, how many classes are required to complete the Padre program?
The parenting education consists of 12 educations.
Okay. And you said, so she was referred to you for parenting? Her parenting?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
How many did she complete the 12?
She didn't complete the 12. She managed to complete 10 of the 12. There were gaps, of course, whenever she went into inpatient. So I would just make her case inactive until she either completed or I heard from her again.
Okay. And have you heard from her in a while?
I haven't heard from her since February.
Since February. Okay. And so her case for classes and case have been inactive, I think is the word you used. Inactive since February?
Yes.
Okay. How was she doing in the classes?
When she would participate, Jennifer was doing fine. I mean, she engaged well, but also it just wasn't just about the education. We were also additional support for the individuals. So I was a good support system for her. And it's basically to get her to try to encourage her and to try to help keep her focused.
Okay. Was she having issues keeping focus on the program?
Not on the program itself, but she did have some issues staying focused just with life in general.
Okay. Did she ever admit, or did y'all discuss any substance issues?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
To a certain point.
Yeah.
I didn't get deep into the addiction part. My purpose and focus was to identify the underlying issues and reasoning for her turning to the substance use.
Okay. And did y'all get far enough along to determine that?
Yes, she ended up, she suffers from anxiety, depression, and self-esteem issues, some trauma, both mental and physical abuse. Yes, sir.
Does your program also help with the daily recovery?
Yes, if necessarily, sometimes daily recovery does refer to us, or we can refer to her or to them. But there was times when Jennifer would go do inpatient, of course, and I always made it available for her to contact me anytime she needs someone to talk to, or she started to struggle a little bit. And once she would come out, we would start her services back up. The thing about our program is that with the education, if you miss an education, for the most part, you have to wait until that education comes back around in its numerical order, and it causes the individual to be in the program a lot longer than 3 months.
Gotcha. Okay. And you said there are 12 classes on, well, as far as the parenting, there's 12 classes. How long does it normally take to complete those if you stay focused on it?
If you stay focused on it, you're at every meeting, every group, 12 weeks.
Okay. So it's once a week, essentially?
Once a week, yes, sir.
All right. But when, do you know when she originally started that program?
Yes, I opened her July the 14th of 2022.
And you said that it's been inactive since February?
She went into recovery inpatient at Plainview Serenity. I had closed her temporarily inactive actually December the 9th.
Okay. So from the time she started to now, we'll say till now, it's been what, 10 months? About?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Once she contacted me when she left Plainview Serenity, I reopened her case, made it active January 27th of 2023, and then of course she went into inpatient at Centocor, and she contacted me a couple of times, and that's the last time I actually spoke with her.
Okay. But as far as you said, if you stay focused on it, it's about 12 weeks to finish the program. And right now we're going on about 10 months, and she hasn't completed the program. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Graves, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. Of course, my familiarity with Texas Panhandle Centers is usually focused around people experiencing either a mental illness or experiencing intellectual disability. In order to participate in your program, do they also have to have a diagnosis like that?
No, I mean, unfortunately, when it comes to the CPS involvement, there are stipulations. They normally have to have children 6 years or younger. And then if they don't have a CPS involvement, the qualifications are new parents, whether they're getting ready to have a child or have a child 18 months and older. But the thing is, you mentioned TPC with the mental health at IDD. That's just underlying issues. It's not just always about the substance use. So in our program, with me having a history of said addiction, 31 years clean. So I understand that it's not always about the substance use, it's usually about what's going on mentally. And if we can target that's that issue, and we can start teaching them tools to help them cope, to help them deal, to get them in a different perspective of thinking, how they feel about themselves, how they see themselves worth as far as life, and help building them up as a person.
Do you know if Ms. Trogdon was ever offered through your employer any kind of medication or counseling or anything other than your program?
I do know that she has some additional referrals as far as I believe she was doing some counseling through Pace Lawson at one time. I do know that one of the next steps for us was to probably to eventually get her involved in TPC on the mental health side and to get evaluated, things of this nature.
Did you ever see anything in your interactions with her that indicated to you that she had any competency issues?
Competency is
right.
I would definitely say during her emotional breakdowns or when she was going through what she may have been dealing with at that time. But I do know there was times when she displayed great understanding, and but you had to take your time to get her to understand. But she was willing to ask questions. She was willing to meet me one-on-ones, even if it was hard for her to discuss things, because we focus on trying to come into reality as far as talking about whatever maybe individuals go through and deal with.
So did you ever get the impression that she was unable to understand the significance of your program and the need to complete it?
No, she understood. Again, it was just the barriers that she would face in her life, as far as not having support, being in a not so grounded relationship, things of that nature, and then trying to deal with her own trauma that had been caused throughout life, that she had been trying to deal with, but unfortunately wasn't really able to deal with on a consistent level.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass the witness, Mr. Murphy.
Yes, Mr. Graves, you mentioned with the project program that if someone misses one of the learning sessions, they have to wait until they come back around again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And you said the program usually takes about 12 weeks.
Correct.
So if they miss one of the learning programs, will they have to wait an additional 12 weeks before it comes around again?
If that was the case, yes, sir. Now,
Okay.
there were some, if the individual showed consistency and open communication, now there was opportunities to reschedule and do that education to make up the education on one-on-one through a Zoom and have an opportunity to do that education.
Okay, but if they're usually someone misses one of the education programs, you mentioned you have to wait till it comes around again in order. How long does that usually take for it to come around again?
It can take up to 3 more months, depending on the education. Yes, sir. And what they missed. Yes, sir. Or it can just take a 13-week, depending on when they started the program. How often have they missed the program? It's not just when you're talking about it can go up to 3 weeks. You're talking about at least when they missing at least anywhere from 2 to 3 education. Now, if they started with one education, they just missed that one education, it can take up to 13 weeks. If they miss 2 or 3 educations during that 3-month period, it can take up to the 3 months.
Sure. I'll pass with this, Your Honor.
Ms. Lucero,
I don't have any questions for Mr. Graves, Your Honor. I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Zavala.
I have no questions, Your Honor.
All right, very good. Any redirect, Mr. Trout?
No, Your Honor, I don't believe so.
May we dismiss Mr. Graves?
No objection.
Anybody
No
have any
objection.
objection? The department may call its next witness.
We call Christina Hunter back real quick, Your Honor.
Okay, very good. Ms. Hunter, I'll just remind you, you're still under oath.
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Hunter, this is just kind of follow up to clarify again. Today, we're asking for termination of both parents' rights
Yes, sir.
as to both children.
Yes, sir.
And based upon failure to work services,
Yes, sir.
constructive abandonment, and an alternative on the dad, failure to register for paternity registry. Is that correct?
Correct.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Murphy, do you wish to call any additional witnesses?
Yeah, if I could have just a moment to confer with my clients.
Sure. Do you want us to put you all in a break room?
Yes, please.
Okay, we'll do that.
Your Honor, we'll rest this time.
Okay, Ms. Lucero, do you wish to call any additional witnesses?
No witnesses, Your Honor. I rest.
Ms. Zavala, do you care to call any witnesses?
No witnesses, Your Honor.
Very good. Could I then have a recommendation from the ad litem?
Your Honor, I do believe that it's in the children's best interest that the parental rights for both parents be terminated at this time.
Okay, well, let me give everybody an opportunity to make a closing argument. Mr. Trout, I'll let you go first.
Your Honor, I think the evidence has shown that throughout the life of this case, Ms. Trogdon or Mr. Goldsmith, neither one participated to the full amount that it takes to get your child back and to prove that they are in the position to provide a safe and healthy home for the child. Ms. Trogdon did participate in some of her services, but was outside of OSAR. She never really finished a program. She would start them and just never finished. We heard Mr. Graves just state, it's a 12-week program. It's been 10 months and she still hasn't finished it. I understand that program that rolls around some, but they will work with you to try to finish some of those things earlier. But almost a full year to not complete 12 and to come up too short on that. I understand she went into treatment a couple of times, but she also left those before she finished the treatments. This case involves some drug issues. Ms. Trogdon does not appear that she has resolved those issues, and it's not a safe place to put a child back into. As far as Mr. Goldsmith, he has not done anything in the case or really attempted to do anything in the case. The service plans were filed. He signed on them. He knew that any amended services would need to be done along with the ones that were provided in the original service plan, and he has still not done any of those. He's not been consistent in contact with the department in order to get those things done. We would ask that both parents' rights be terminated to the children as for failure to work services, but also for constructive abandonment. They have not routinely or consistently visited with the children to build the bond. Mr. Goldsmith has not had any visits throughout the case. He's been given opportunities to work toward those and has not taken advantage of those. Ms. Trogdon's visitations were cut off due to routinely not testing or testing positive and not working her services, and still has not done what she was supposed to earn those visitations back at this time. Both parents' rights be terminated based upon those facts. And Mr. Goldsmith also was served with the case and never filed with the paternity registry after that point.
Very good. Ms. Lucero?
Your Honor, I understand there's testimony that Mr. Goldsmith didn't, finish any services. The thing is, Your Honor, from the beginning through testimony, he was advised that he needed to work services for possible reunification with his children. At the start of this case, he was a non-offending parent. When the children were removed, they weren't with Mr. Goldsmith. Yes, he was advised he needed to work services, but testimony did not show that anyone ever said, hey, if you work services, you could be possible placement for the children. I understand that he's not here today. He didn't work the services that from the original service plan, Your Honor, but I would have, asked that the court take into consideration that it was never made clear to him that placement could be, the children could be placed with him during the duration of this case. And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Very good, Mr. Murphy.
Yeah, with regard to Ms. Trogdon, I think the testimony is shown here today that she's been struggling with not only a drug addiction, but several personal psychological issues. As Ms. Gray mentioned, there was anxiety, depression, trauma, all this coupled together with a drug addiction. It takes time to get over that, and not everybody's able to get through it in the average time frame that takes. I think throughout the life of the case, Ms. Trogdon has shown that she's trying, but she has not been able to successfully complete the program. She's enrolled in the daily recovery program, the Padre program, and the Senecor, and yet she has not completed them, but she's consistently trying to deal with this addiction. And as Ms. Gray testified, if she gets behind the program, something that can take several months before she gets the opportunity to get back on it. I believe we acknowledge that she has not completed services. However, she has made a valiant effort throughout to try to deal with this addiction. I would hate to see her parental rights terminated simply because she hasn't been able to overcome that addiction yet.
Ethan, if the court were inclined not to terminate her rights today, what could the court do in the future to try to turn things around?
I'm not certain at the moment, Your Honor. I know we understand that placement back with Ms. Trogdon at the moment is not a viable option, and it would be in the best interest of the children to have some permanency. However, Ms. Trogdon would like to somehow still be able to communicate and have access to her children in the future. So we're asking the court to, if we can come up with some alternative to just absolute termination of her rights, but have a permanent placement for children. So we're hoping to come up with today.
And Ms. Zavala, other than your recommendation, do you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Your Honor, I appreciate that Jennifer Trogdon has struggled. I hope that somewhere down the line she can find what she needs to become sober and stay sober. At this point, she's been working on this issue for at least 18 months with the family-based beginning this process. The children can no longer wait. They've waited and ending visits was difficult on them. I've met with them in person regularly. I do hope that Ms. Trogdon can get clean for her sake and for theirs, in case there's at some point in the future they might run into each other again. But right now, those kids have been through a lot, and they've waited, and I think to have them wait anymore at this point would not be in their best interest.
Let me ask you, and I'm really good sometimes at these hearings of showing my ignorance, but because I just didn't handle these types of cases when I was an elected judge, my understanding from the testimony is there currently isn't someone waiting in the wings to adopt. And to me, that would give me a lot more comfort in doing what y'all are asking me to do. If the children are, I'm going to use the term, in limbo as they are now, does terminating in any way improve their I don't know if this isn't a good word, attractiveness, I guess that's not a good word, but their viability to be adopted, does that change anything for the kids?
I think it's a very good question, and yes, it does. Up until just about a week ago, we thought we had a place for them, and so that was a surprise and it was a disappointment. But until a parent's rights are terminated, we can't actively look for an adoptive placement. This happened to be a placement that knew them and knew them through the current placement. So that, unfortunately, that particular placement will not work out. But we're not even able to explore adoptive families for them until parental rights are terminated. I do believe that these children would have a future adoptive placement. I believe that is a possibility and probability for them. It won't be with the one that we were initially hoping it would be. But we can't start that process for them until parental rights are terminated.
Okay, that's
Your
helpful. I appreciate that. Yes, Lynn.
Your Honor, as I stated, that placement that they thought maybe was possible adoption has fallen through. It is possible also that the parental rights of neither parent be terminated, and then permanent managing conservatorship to the department, the parents remain possessory conservator, and it'll get reviewed every 6 months. I mean, I understand that maybe a family may not want to step in at this point because the parental rights are not terminated, but at the same time, there's hundreds of kids out there in foster care. It seems like everybody wants the little babies or the kids that are 2 and under, but as the kids get older, we all know it's more difficult. Granted, these kids aren't teenagers, but it does become more difficult. So I understand that they've been waiting and they were disappointed for the visits to stop. But again, they had to face disappointment when this possible adoption placement fell through. So, if the parents, and I understand they've been given a chance, I understand that, but to extend it, to give permanent managing conservatorship to the department now or St. Francis, not terminate the parents, and it gets reviewed in 6 months. And if things still aren't better, they can terminate at that time. But I just wanted to add that. And that's all I have.
Okay, and I appreciate that.
Your Honor, if I may, I'm the supervisor in this case as well.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a lot of success with adopting children of this age group in the state of Texas. We have not been able to put them on the TIER website. We haven't been able to look at non-relative placements or non-kinship placements because simply parent rights have not been terminated. These children deserve to have forever parents that are going to be able to keep them safe and love them. And while I understand Ms. Trogdon loves her children, she has not been able to keep them safe. We haven't talked a lot in this hearing about the behaviors these children are having because of the difficulties they've experienced when with their parents. But these children have extensive psychological needs, therapy needs. There are some sexualized behavior issues that have come up. And so we have a lot of concerns that can be addressed in an appropriate placement in a forever home. And I don't know that Ms. Trogdon can provide that. She's tried for 18 months and hasn't made any substantial behavior changes. So that is my concern. I know Casa hasn't weighed in yet. I would be interested to hear what Janelle has to say.
Oh, and I'm sorry that I prevented her from speaking.
Your Honor, and before Mr. Janelle says something, can I make one statement real quick?
Sure.
There's also a new law. It hasn't been utilized a whole lot, but it's when parents' rights are involuntarily terminated, such as what we're asking for today. If a child has not been adopted in 2 years and parents have straightened up, there is a way for them to file to have parental rights reinstated. Like I said, it's fairly new. It hasn't been used a lot, but it's another route to go to let us allow to put the kids up for adoption that we haven't been able to do at this time. And if that doesn't work, that gives Ms. Trogdon or Mr. Goldsmith at least a 2-year mark to try to work on that and get things straight, which is, I think, would be better than pushing it 6 months down the road and 6 months down the road and her worrying about this and the kids instead of working on herself. But as just something that I wasn't sure if the court was aware of is that's a new statute that's put in.
I was not aware of that, and I really do appreciate you telling me that. And I that's important for parents to hear too. Janelle, I apologize. I haven't meant to ignore you, but I would be very interested. I've read your report, I will say that, but I'd be very interested to know how you feel about this.
Thank you, Your Honor. The children they're very active. They're very hyper. They have been through a lot. They are sweet children though. And I've been doing this for 14 plus years or longer. And I believe that no child is not adoptable. I think every child is at one point or other. As we always want the parents to do what they need to do and the children go back to their parents. And this is not happening in this case. And I think termination would be the best. And hopefully these children can find a stability in a home that they will be taken care of and not have to deal with the trauma that they've had to deal with already in the past. So my recommendations would be that they remain in placement at PMC to the department and termination of the parents' rights.
Yeah, just
Sure.
real quick, Miss Trout is messaging me. She's having some technical issues on her end now. I don't know. She says she's trying to log into another device. I don't know if you see that in the waiting room.
Oh, I don't know. Rachel, have we seen any? Her
No.
screen's still up.
Yeah, no, Judge, I don't have anyone in the waiting room.
We just wanted to make sure you were back before we continued. Okay, well, with that, having heard the evidence and testimony and having also heard the recommendation of our CASA advocate and also the ad litem, Jennifer, they tell us at judges school to rule and run, right? Don't explain yourself. But I think it's important for you to understand where I'm coming from. I didn't hear these kinds of cases when I was a sitting judge, but I did hear cases where I, sentenced people to life in prison. And on 2 occasions, unfortunately, I actually had to tell people the date on which they were going to be executed. So I've had to do some tough things, but I don't think there's anything tougher than being asked to terminate a parent's rights. And that's not an easy decision for me. And quite frankly, not a decision I particularly want to make, but that's my job. And that's why I'm here. And I have to try to do what's right. Not only for you, but more importantly, what's in the best interest of those kids. And I you don't know this about me, but I still preside over a drug court where weekly I try to help people that have drug and alcohol addiction and experience homelessness and mental health and all the issues that go along with that. And so I'm a big believer in second chances and probably third and fourth and fifth chances, maybe too. But I also understand, in order to help somebody, they have to want the help and help us help you. And we can't do that unless you're willing to take the ball and run with it, so to speak, even though you've got a lot of support around you. So in just looking at the situation, having heard about the kids and their current situation and kind of what they need to move forward with their lives, based upon all that, I am going to terminate both the rights of the children's father and their mother. I will name the department as the permanent managing conservator of Alyssa and Eric, and find that their current placement is appropriate. Hopefully we'll find something better for them, but we'll continue that placement at this time. And Jennifer, I would offer you this, and I was happy to hear that we do have a law now that would allow you to reapply if the kids aren't adopted within that 2 years. There's a lot of programs out there for people who need help and need that extra help. And I just came back from lunch where I was at the Downtown Women's Center luncheon. And I know for a fact, because I work with the women in that program, that there are a lot of women in your position. And there's some women that have actually lost custody of their children, but they've seen the need to get that help. And they've gone to a place like Downtown Women's Center and they've gotten that help. And I can think of one lady I'm helping right now in particular that lost custody to some of her children, but she's been reinstated custody with her baby now and has a whole new life and a whole new opportunity to start over. And all that's because she's, reached the point where she is willing to accept that help. And she's got Downtown Women's Center has her back and they're helping her every step of the way. So I just don't want you to lose hope. There is hope. And there are places that can give you that love and that support and that hope. And I hope you'll seek those places out. And if there's anything I can do to help you land someplace like that, I would do everything I could to help you. So I wish you good luck. And I hope those children have a happy, successful life. And I will conclude the hearing now. Anything else I need to address?
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Also, due to determination in the Department of PMC, we would need to dismiss all court-appointed attorneys except Ms. Zavala, I believe, to leave them in.
Okay.
Also, just for the record, grounds, are we terminating on mother's rights on failure to work service and constructive abandonment, or just which one?
Yes, both of those, and the father, of course, not registering and also not working services and abandonment. And I will dismiss all the attorneys excepting Ms. Zavala. All right. Thanks, y'all, for all your hard work on this.
And next court hearing for the people still involved would be August 3rd at 9 o'clock.